Well, happy Friday on this November 8th, 2024. I'm Greg Bishop. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts and join us each and every weekday morning live at 8 here on YouTube with America's Talking Network. Programming note, I am going to take Veterans Day off on Monday. But next week, we've got a ton to tackle. So Tuesday, we'll be back at it live with a preview of fall veto session. We've also got several lawsuits concerning firearms that we're going to be monitoring. Everything from the Cook County gun ban challenge in the federal appeals court. You've also got the FOID card challenge in state appeals court. That's going to be later on this month. But we'll be watching as well to see if there's any developments out of Chicago with their lawsuit against Glock. And we've also got the possible outcome of the state's gun ban in the Southern District of Federal Court. So we'll be watching all of that, including fall veto session kicking off next week here in Springfield. So if you don't already get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com, go and subscribe. It's free. You get the newsletter, headlines you need to know from the Center Square. So get all those headlines there for Illinois. But also, again, get this podcast where you get podcasts. Check out the weekend edition with analysis of Tuesday's election and more. Myself and Dan McCaleb, we discuss a variety of things. So the Illinois in Focus Weekend Edition is a podcast you can also get with this podcast on the daily side. So be sure to get all here with Illinois in Focus and the Center Square with America's Talking Network. Coming up, we'll hear what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say of President Donald Trump taking the White House after Tuesday's election, where Trump swept all the swing states, got the popular votes. Looks like control of Congress going to Republicans. What does that mean for a state like Illinois? Well, Governor Pritzker shared his thoughts. We'll also hear from State Representative Dan Calkins on his thoughts. So stay tuned. It's right here with Illinois in Focus Daily.
Donald Trump will be our next president. He won the election, and we must all be willing to work together for the common good. Having fought through the headwinds of the first Trump administration, the General Assembly and I took proactive steps to plan for the potential of a second Trump presidency and protect our residents from the damage that it may attempt to cause.
I think that this time around, President Trump and his new administration are going to use every lever, every leverage that they have to try to turn this country around and to enforce the mandate that he was just given. We'll see what's going to happen, but I think it's a great time. I think this is going to be a very, very good time for America, and I look forward to the next 4 years.
That's former, soon-to-be outgoing State Representative Dan Calkins, a Republican from Decatur, and Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday, separately sharing their thoughts about the outcome of Tuesday's election. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to get the daily podcasts anywhere you get podcasts, Illinois in Focus, and wake up with us weekday mornings here with America's Talking Network live. All right, so yesterday, of course, was a news conference Governor J.B. Pritzker held that was the first news conference after Tuesday's election. And, he had some opening statements. The Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, also shared some thoughts. But here's primarily what the governor had to say.
Donald Trump will be our next president. He won the election, and we must all be willing to work together for the common good. And I'm here today to remind people that no matter the storm that we face, Illinois will always strive to make you welcome and safe and protected. Chaos, retribution, and disarray radiated from the White House the last time Donald Trump occupied it. Perhaps this time may be different. But if it isn't, Illinois will remain a place of stability and competent governance. Illinois will continue to be a refuge for those whose rights are being denied elsewhere, women seeking reproductive health care, immigrants searching to work hard for a better life, LGBTQ Americans looking for welcome and protection, and people with disabilities whose civil and human rights are under attack.
So again, Pritzker laying out all of the different groups he says are under attack by a Trump administration in coming to the White House. And he talked about, possible actions that the state's still controlled by Democratic supermajorities in the legislature. Democrats control all statewide constitutional offices like governor and treasurer and attorney general. So are we going to see some things that Democrats are going to pass during the veto session to deal with what they see as a threat from Donald Trump?
Over years past, we've thought a lot about, what happens if the administration in Washington changes, if the tone changes, what would have a negative effect. Senior staff to talk about exactly this. Indeed, I talked to some other governors around the country about the things that they're looking at doing. And so we're gathering, I would call it a list of things that we may need to address. Maybe not during a veto session, but maybe. It can be done in the new year. There is time to do that. You can imagine what all of health care, reproductive rights, you can go down the list of, there are areas where I think, you can imagine the people who woke up on Wednesday morning and saw the results, if they didn't already see them on Tuesday night. And there are many people whose lives and livelihoods are at risk, and there are many people who cried at the result because they know what impact it may have on their families. So think about them.
So again, Governor Pritzker laying out some of his concerns and what the State House may be able to do to push back. We'll hear more from the governor in a moment, but I connected with State Representative Dan Calkins yesterday. He gave himself term limits. He decided not to run again for the State House, but he's still there for veto session, and he's still there for lame duck session. And his reaction to Tuesday's outcome nationally of Donald Trump getting the popular vote in the Electoral College and both chambers of Congress signifies to him a major shift in the political landscape.
The Democrats are infighting now, pointing fingers. It was Biden's fault. It was Obama's fault. It was this fault. It was that fault. No, the fault is the agenda of the last 4 years of the Democrat Party and how they've gotten away from representing the ordinary working class people. You look at the bubble around Washington, D.C., Virginia, and those people have no clue what we go through here, in our hometowns. And so they have this woke agenda, and they perpetrate it on the rest of the world, particularly rural America. And we finally, after 4 years, got an opportunity to tell the Democrats we've had enough. And if I were a Democrat in Illinois, protected by this map even, I would look at the results. I would look at what happened in Chicago. I would look at what happened in Will County, Cook County, or in DuPage County with the Trump effect. And if I were Tammy Duckworth, Senator Duckworth at this point in the minority in the Senate, faced with the 60 votes that it takes to break a filibuster. And if she wants to try to stand in the way of President Trump and the Republicans' agenda, I see President Trump coming to Illinois and campaigning for her opponent in 2 years. I think that you saw Senator Coons from Maryland start talking softly about the agenda and about what we need to work together. We need to find stuff. I watched your interview with LaShawn Ford, another far left Democrat in the Illinois House, start talking about, well, yeah, we should be working with the federal government and ICE and deporting these illegal criminals that are in our communities. That's unheard of. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. But I think it's a great time. I think this is going to be a very, very good time for America. And I look forward to the next 4 years.
So again, Calkins talking about the political shift there. Interesting. He's looking forward to the next election. And Tammy Duckworth, mentioning her. Let's take a look at what Tammy Duckworth had to say. As deeply, deeply disappointed as I am by the results of the election, make no mistake, my Democratic colleagues and I, unlike many Republicans after the 2020 election, will uphold the will of the people, fulfill our constitutional duty, and do our part to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. Vice President Harris should be proud. Goes on to talk about, party loyalty must never be take priority over oath. But she also goes on to talk about sympathizing for the millions of Americans who are distraught by the knowledge that Donald Trump will soon be president once again. To each of you, Duckworth said, please know that I am as dedicated today as I've ever been to doing absolutely everything in my power as a United States Senator to defend our rights and our freedoms. And you can read the rest there if you're watching live. So clearly, the political prognostication here from the corporate media, really, and the pollsters, doesn't seem to have hit the nail on the head. But one thing that is obviously clearly a concern is grant dollars. Because, listen, Donald Trump campaigned on mass deportations of violent illegal aliens and also to end sanctuary cities. Illinois has a sanctuary cities and is a sanctuary state where law enforcement is prohibited from working with federal authorities to enforce immigration law. So how is Trump going to get a state like Illinois to essentially reverse its immigration, the fostering of undocumented migrants? It could be through withholding certain types of grant dollars. That's something that Pritzker said in general terms they're going to fight back against any efforts.
On the first question, to the extent that these things are nonpartisan grants that are decided by independent groups within the agencies, which happens for most grants, it would be illegal for the Trump administration to stop those grants from flowing, and so we would take action if we saw that happening.
So again, Pritzker talking about taking action if the incoming Trump administration does something with the grant dollars, more from the governor on that.
Any political actions that the president takes, I think, will be, work to his detriment politically. And I think that to the extent that they break the law, because politics in many cases can't be imposed upon things that are due to the various states. So I feel, reasonably okay about our ability to withstand anything that the Trump administration brings to us, but I can't predict the future.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the next 2 years looks like, because Republicans are going to have control of the Senate and the House. Congress controls the party purse, or not the party, the taxpayer purse. So are we going to see some policies come out that restrict grant dollars for certain things if states don't go along and help enforce federal immigration law? When it comes to the transportation grant dollars the state gets, Pritzker says he's confident those are fine.
Again, sorry, just to be clear, the federal infrastructure dollars, again, are decided on an apolitical, non-political basis. That's how they're supposed to be decided. And indeed, we've, trust me, I've, contacted lots of people in the federal government that I know, elected officials or, appointed political officials, to make sure that they know what Illinois needs. And I can say, for certain that, the independence of those divisions of the agencies really are making the decisions. And we've been very fortunate because we are at the center of the supply chain for the nation. And so we've received a lot of support. Indeed, we're one of the largest recipients of transportation-related infrastructure dollars.
So again, the governor fielding questions yesterday, pretty wide-ranging news conference with a variety of different questions. But back to Republican State Representative Dan Calkins, he said, listen, whoever's in power of the White House has the ability to, usher through their agenda, just like the Biden-Harris administration's done for the past 4 years.
We've seen how the Biden-Harris administration used the federal government to further their agenda. We watched most recently the reaction in Western North Carolina to the disaster, to the flooding, and how they drug their feet with FEMA and response, and it was up to as opposed to what happened in New Orleans or Houston and some other disasters. This is the last administration, the current administration, has shown that our government can use its power, the administration in power can use the levers of power to enforce its agenda on the states. And the Democrats shouldn't be surprised when the Trump administration uses the same levers, the same leverage to make sure that the agenda that President Trump was elected over, even in the popular vote, was elected to pursue. So I think the hand-wringing and all is expected, but I think that this time around, President Trump and his new administration are going to use every lever, every leverage that they have to try to turn this country around and to enforce the mandate that he was just given.
So again, Calkins sharing his thoughts on what's going to happen over the next 2 to 4 years. But also, we've got another election coming up in 2 years, believe that or not. And it just so happens to be a gubernatorial election. Yesterday, the governor was asked about a possible third term for governor, or what about setting things up to be a presidential contender in 2028?
As you know, the work that I do now as governor is work that I love doing. And there is, in the wake of the Tuesday election, I think back to my first days in office, my first 2 years in office, where Donald Trump was president, and we had to defend Illinois against an awful lot of, policies that the Trump administration. That work is going to continue. And I don't have anything to announce today, but I promise you, Mary Ann, you'll be among the first to know if I have something to announce about running for re-election, and I have no plans for anything else.
No plans for anything else. We'll see. Obviously, a question that he's had to answer time and time again about his political future and if he is indeed going to possibly run for the White House in 2028. Of course, already hearing things about, California Governor Gavin Newsom trying to set the stage for a similar type of, maybe Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania Governor. It's going to be an interesting ride, and we'll be here for all of it. And also, I think that it's going to be crucial for you to follow along here with Illinois in Focus Daily, because, quite frankly, I think Illinois is going to be among the fulcrum of showing the stark difference between the federal policies and the policies of states controlled by Democrats. So fascinating stuff ahead. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We'll be covering it all here as we like to do with Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, and join us each and every weekday morning here with America's Talking Network. Another week of testimony in the corruption trial against former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan and co-defendant Mike McClain. Jim Talamonte, reporter for the Center Square up in Chicago, has been in court all week long, and he's got the latest for us. Jim, obviously, it looks like here we are, week 3 of testimony? But clearly, we're expecting a lot more testimony. Another busy week here. Good morning.
Go and just think about some of the witnesses to come. Eddie Acevedo, former state rep. We thought we were going to hear from Elena Hampton this week, former campaign staffer who made a sexual harassment allegation. That did not come to pass. We don't know when or if she will testify. We also don't know if State Rep Bob Rita will return. He testified for about 10 minutes 2 weeks ago at the end of an afternoon, did not come back the next day. So we haven't heard what's happening there. But one of the big ones is going to be Danny Solis. There are going to be fireworks with his history here. That'll be something a little different that wasn't happening in the ComEd 4 case. Yesterday, we had a full day, a lot of recordings and a lot of emails shared. Again, a lot of this was part of the ComEd 4 bribery case, but now with more, with Madigan in the courtroom and with that happening, so a lot of stuff being laid out. We'll get cross-examination of former ComEd executive Fidel Marquez. We thought that might start yesterday, didn't. So that's coming Tuesday, and there should be, when he went through cross in the ComEd 4 case, there were some fireworks with Patrick Cotter, who's Mike McClain's lead defense attorney. And then now you have the Madigan team, who's going to be, you can just see they're licking their chops to get to him. So a lot of interesting stuff to come, but yes, a lot of stuff, period. Judges saying, his math is showing this looks more like 13 weeks instead of 11. During jury selection, the estimate was 10 weeks. So we keep, as most of us covering this have thought, this is going to be longer than initially projected. And the judge said, well, at some point we have to tell jurors so they're not making holiday flights and that kind of thing. So a long way to go here with this.
Obviously, we're approaching the holidays. Thanksgiving's just around the corner, let alone Veterans Day on Monday with no court. Then you got the Christmas holiday and New Year's. So do you anticipate that this thing's going to go into the new year?
I think mid-January, and again, these estimates don't include deliberations, which we're thinking, with 23 counts, that's probably a week. So I can't see it ending unless something strange happens or unexpected, some kind of abrupt end. I can't see this ending before mid-January. It's just there's too much. It's taking too long to get through some of these witnesses. And
and then also all the recordings that there have been, including undercover video recordings. Jim, I'm going to play a few things here. It's about a minute long, so bear with me. You might not hear this down the line, but I'll re-encapsulate for you. You already heard it in the court. But what's fascinating about this video is it's Fidel Marquez, one of the prosecutor's cooperating witnesses, wearing an undercover video recording device for the prosecution, for the federal investigators. And he even, in conversations he's had previously with others, like I believe... was it Doherty that he had conversations with?
Jay Doherty, yep.
Talking about how, I've got to try to make sense to the guys up at the top of ComEd about why we're going to be hiring these people. What are they going to be doing for this money? And, the ComEd 4 defendant who was found guilty, ultimately, he said, well, nothing. I mean, this is just a favor for Mike Madigan. And then it has Marquez going to a meeting with a top ComEd executive and McClain trying to make the case for why they should hire certain people. And I do want to play some of this because it's kind of revealing. And what's revealing about this, some of this, Jim, was aired during the ComEd 4 trial. But what's fascinating is I compared the video of them meeting with the CEO of the ComEd with what they released during the ComEd 4 trial. And the first little bit here where they name Mike Madigan was not part of the ComEd 4 video they released. Thought that was kind of fascinating, at least from my initial comparison between the evidence that's been presented in ComEd 4 versus the evidence that's now being presented in the Madigan trial. So here's a little bit of that undercover video.
The history with Madigan is even in the when Lee Daniels was speaker, we had a bill that we wanted heard, and Lee wanted no part of it. And even then, Madigan grabbed the bill when, he got to name people to be meter readers, right? I mean, it's the old-fashioned patronage system, and ComEd played it like
it should.
You're a ward committeeman, and we have 7 meter readers in your ward, and you can name 4 of them. And that's just the way ComEd was for years. And then, so that's just what we've always done for, good Lord, over 20 years now, because we can't really do meter readers. We don't have them anymore. We don't have linemen. There's no one from the 13th Ward linemen. So
it's like the lobbying team itself. There are periods of time where people are saying, "The hell are these guys doing? Why are we paying them?"
right.
And then they will do something in the magic moment.
That's worth
between
that's worth 100 times what you're paying them.
Right. And so that's.
Doing this for Madigan, and how even when he wasn't speaker, he would go and grab a ComEd bill, and then they would kind of do the old-fashioned patronage thing, right? But they don't have meter readers anymore. They just have these politically connected people that are going to do nothing for the utility to get the exchange of money. Pretty incredible and impactful evidence, not just testimony for the jury.
It's really juicy stuff. I mean, you hear this, and I've had people tell me you've listened to recordings what we've had on the Center Square, and that you've posted there, and they said, well, this is it. Well, wait a minute. Is this quid pro quo, or is this just ComEd doing favors for Madigan to gain favor? Is this really an exchange? And so that's been the defense's argument. Also, we'll see some separation here, but not really. You're not hearing direct orders from Madigan in most cases. So it's going to be very interesting. All it takes is one juror, as we saw in the AT&T case, to as much success as prosecutors have had over the last few years with some of these corruption cases. And the lead prosecutor here with the Marquez line of questioning, Amar Bacha, I mean, he's a machine. He just go, and of course he did this in the ComEd case, but there also, as you said, Gert, there's been nuance here now with the inclusion of Madigan and with more focus on Madigan, our friend, in a slew of emails yesterday presented where it's our friend or himself with H capitalized, as if this were the Lord Almighty. I mean, it's just, so he's God of the 13th Ward and the Democratic Party of Illinois and the Illinois House. And in any kind of dealing with ComEd, everyone drops everything to please Mr. Speaker.
It's pretty incredible. Obviously, you'll still be in court next week, starting Tuesday, but you got today off from court, so it's good to kind of kick back a bit and process everything you've been hearing and seeing and reading. First-hand account here of you being in the courtroom in Chicago. Also interesting, you've been able to get a few words out of Madigan and McClain the past few days as they were walking in. He kind of gave you those Madigan eyes that I've seen here down in Springfield from time to time when I was covering it for him when he was the Speaker of the House. What's that like to see him walk in with a big smile on his face, waving and saying good morning?
Yeah, it's interesting because you said one day I got that evil glare, and but I don't think he knows. He doesn't know me as he does you, Greg, from your questioning and your tough questions of him that many reporters don't ask. But then now he's seen me, and a lot of days I'm the only one out there taking videos. So this guy, other than the TV stations were out there for the first day of. So Madigan, yesterday he was running a little behind, and he's a creature of habit. So instead of getting there about 8:20, it was closer at 8:30. So you could see he wanted to get in there. So there was a quick acknowledgement, but not the cheery Madigan that we saw the previous couple of days. And one day he said, "Good to see you," which was I was kind of shocked by that. And even McClain now, though, I get the wave and the little smile, almost as if they're doing the presidential wave when nobody's out there. They're not waving to anyone when they're getting on the plane, right? So similar kind of thing. They're only waving to me, really. But whereas the prosecutors were very unassuming, Bachu will kind of nod, but just goes into does his business, and gets into that courthouse. But Madigan always surrounded by several of his defense attorneys. And yesterday, a little bit late, Todd Pugh was the only one with him. But usually, he's got 3 or 4 of his, 5 leading attorneys at his table. And so he's always surrounded usually by at least 2 or 3 of them.
Pretty incredible stuff. Obviously, we'll hear more about this. People can get the latest at thecentersquare.com. Jim Talamonte with those reports. You're fantastic. Thank you for your endurance. Just to give people an understanding, okay? So Tuesday morning, jury didn't have to come in until late because it was election day. So Jim was getting to the court about 10:30, gets to the court 11 o'clock. Because it's election day, you know, we're in the radio business, Jim. We got to provide coverage to our statewide affiliation with Illinois Radio Network, the election night coverage. So you're able to jump in and help with that. So I appreciate you putting in that nice 13, 14-hour day on Tuesday.
Well, this ties together, Greg. I know there were people leaving the courthouse who were all excited about the election, and they asked what we were all doing, and we said we're covering the Madigans. Oh, we're more worried about the election. I just wanted to scream, this is all connected. You know, when you look at the Madigan machine, to think that when you think of all the redistricting and all of these things that were going on in the machine
money,
that he built,
you know,
and the
he
political,
talked with
the
Ann
money.
Pramaggiore about how McLean saying, hey, he got all this money from big dollar donors and he stuffed it into these downstate Democrat districts like Jay Hoffman. He never is able to raise $400,000.
Yes.
It's pretty remarkable
Rita.
stuff. So we'll be watching this closely. Jim Talamonte, thecentersquare.com. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, so it's another week down in the Madigan trial, and obviously something we'll keep people, posted on what's going on. So be sure to get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Happy Friday. Got to get out of here. And reminder, I am going to take the day off Monday. So be sure to join us Tuesday morning. Get the podcast where you get the podcast. Don't forget, we've got the weekend edition of Illinois in Focus coming out with myself and Dan McCaleb discussing the news. So be sure to check that out and get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. Next week, we've got veto session. We've got a couple of hearings concerning lawsuits around guns. Then we'll obviously have veto session the week after that, all the Madigan coverage. So get it all at thecentersquare.com. Have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you soon.